The goon chimes in. He said Drake continuing to expose himself as a defender just by this list. Hey, look, goon, I don't know, man. Dre putting himself on the list is the first issue I have with the list because Draymond does not belong in this conversation. I stated earlier that he doesn't even belong in a top tier list of greatest defenders of all time. He's a he's an excellent defender for his era, but he does not have not only the achievements, but just when you watch him play defense, he's not a dominant defensive force in the ways that we saw some of the other great defenders in the history of the league. So I'm not going to argue the order because I don't think he was giving an order. But listen to some of these names that he didn't mention who probably belong in this list. The first thing I think is obvious is Bill Russell. He didn't talk about Bill Russell in a conversation about the greatest defenders of all time. Bill Russell is responsible for keeping Wilt Chamberlain away from championships. It's very possible that Wilt could have had 15 championships if Bill Russell never came along and did what he did. Bill Russell dominated defensively for the entirety of his career. Not mentioned in this top 5 list makes Draymond Green look crazy. Bill Russell is regarded as one of the best defenders of all time. Some people call him the best defender of all time. He's an 11-time champion, 5-time NBA MVP. He made All-NBA first team 3 times, All-NBA second team 8 times, All-NBA defensive first team in 1969, which I believe was the first time that they did that. Right? They hadn't done that prior to that. So I think that's why you don't have that kind of thing to go off of. But if you just watch the man play, he was a 4-time rebounding champion in a time where he was up against Wilt Chamberlain, one of the most incredible athletes, size, speed, strength combinations we've ever seen in the history of the league. Bill Russell was preventing him from winning. Who the hell is Draymond Green? Who is Draymond Green preventing from winning games? Who is he keeping out of the NBA Finals? Out of championships? What has he done defensively like Bill Russell? I don't see anything there. I think it's incredible that he left off Scottie Pippen, who is widely regarded as one of the best defenders of all time, especially when we talk about perimeter defense and the ability to defend the other team's best wing player. By the way, Scottie had range. Scottie could defend a power forward, small forward, shooting guard. Scottie defended point guards sometimes. Like, Scottie had range. Scottie didn't defend centers, but he had everything else in his defensive capability. To not have him mentioned in a top 5 list, knowing what he accomplished with Michael Jordan in the 90s, it's pretty damn disrespectful. Oh, but there's more. Maybe you could have mentioned Michael Jordan as a top defender all time. A lot of people do. Maybe you want to keep him out of your top 5, but I still think Michael Jordan deserves an honorable mention as one of the greats on defense. Dennis Rodman, what Dennis was doing game in and game out with all the bigs in his era as an undersized big, here's how you know Draymond is an idiot. Dennis Rodman would be a comp for Draymond Green. An undersized big who had to scrape, muscle, fight, and persevere, giving up all the size to the traditional bigs of his era. Dennis would fight with Shaq. Dennis was fighting with the bigs of the era, with the Karl Malones, with Hakeem, with David Robinson, like these all-time great elite centers who are all in the Hall of Fame. Dennis Rodman had to deal with that. Robert Parrish, Bill Laimbeer. He had to deal with all those things. What, Draymond Green, really? You're going to rank yourself over Dennis Rodman? Are you crazy? He really lost a lot of credibility. Hell, you got Gary Payton. You got David Robinson. I would put Kawhi Leonard ahead of Draymond Green because when Kawhi was in his prime, he was absolutely a super lockdown defender. Dikembe Mutombo is all-time great defensively. He kept people, he separated the ball from the hoop when people went up for dunks. Easy too, right? Dikembe, block. I've seen Dikembe Mutombo on multiple occasions have like 4 or 5 blocks on the same play. You ever see Draymond Green have 4 or 5 blocks on a play? You ever see Draymond Green separate players like a stunning fashion, like make those kind of unique defensive plays like Hakeem Olajuwon and those guys? He doesn't have that. Goon says Draymond's defense is putting Rudy Gobert in a chokehold, so he's a fake bully. All right. I mean, some of these guys he ranked, and some of them, the ones that he didn't mention, it just says so much. I mean, I would take Kobe Bryant and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar defensively over Draymond Green. I'm not trying to poo-poo like Tony Allen, but like John Stockton belongs in a conversation as an all-time defender before Tony Allen. Like, look at John Stockton's career as a defender. Like, this guy played from 1984 to 2003, a legitimate 19-20-year career. He made 5 NBA all-defensive second teams. He was an all-NBA first-team player. He's an all-star, all those things. He was a 2-time NBA steals leader. When did Draymond ever have a steals title or a blocks title? He doesn't have any of those things. I mean, Stockton was giving people hell defensively in an era where there were truly impressive all-time great point guards and shooting guards. Remember, Stockton was dealing with Michael Jordan, that era. Penny Hardaway, Tim Hardaway, like Hall of Fame star-studded point guard lists. Did Draymond Green have to guard that caliber of player? Not really. Not really. Draymond Green is dealing with Rudy Gobert. Draymond Green is dealing with Jackson Hayes. Nothing wrong with those guys. I don't mean to disrespect, but Joel Embiid is not even playing. He has to deal with Joker a couple times a year. So what? Draymond Green ain't no all-time top-tier defender. He's got the all defensive teams, and that's good. And for his era, he's a great defender. But he's just not these other guys who had that special intangible defensive prowess. There's just too many guys that are just better. Dwight Howard is a better defender than Draymond Green. Not even near mentioned or on his list. Anthony Davis, one of Draymond Green's contemporaries, a better defender than Draymond Green. Let's dig back into the 90s. Alonzo Mourning, a better defender. Hell, 80s and 90s. Joe Dumars is a better defender. In my opinion, I think Giannis is a better defender than Draymond Green. I think because he's faster, I think his hands can be just as good and he's just as active. He's also, I think, more capable of blocking some incredible shots. Patrick Ewing is a better defender than Draymond Green. Hell, maybe you could make the argument that Chris Paul is a better defender than Draymond Green. And then from the guys who maybe don't have the all-time considerations because they weren't as great of players, I take Rajon Rondo as a defender over Draymond Green. Who else would I take? Would I take Sean Marion? I definitely would take David Robinson. Anthony Davis. There are so many guys. There's like 50 guys that we could go through a list and say are better defenders than Draymond Green. Draymond is a clown. Draymond is an idiot. And you know what this is? It's him trying to build himself up, right? He wants to be viewed as a great, but unfortunately, sir, you are an overachiever, and that's respectable, but unfortunately, you are not these guys. These guys, for several years, were the most special and elite defenders across any era. I don't know how great Draymond Green is as a defender in rankings in certain eras, like in the 80s, like in the 90s. I don't know if he's a top 10 defender in those eras. He's a top defender today because the way the NBA is today. I don't think he translates well in an era with David Robinson and Dennis Rodman and Hakeem Olajuwon and Ben Wallace and Shaquille O'Neal and Gary Payton and John Stockton. Like, I can just name the elites of those eras. They were much better than him. And he's good and he's excellent for his era. He ain't that. Sorry, bro. You're just a guy that came around at a certain time, and you're just viewed as a good defender for today.